Welcome to the Sherry Andrea Psychic Empath Show with your host, Sherry Andrea. Sherry Andrea brings her listeners interesting discussions and topics related to empathy, psychic and spiritual development, as well as energy work. She is herself a psychic empath, healer, coach, author, and founder of SherryAndrea.com. Welcome, and here is your host, Sherry Andrea.
Hi, thank you for joining me tonight. Tonight I wanted to discuss a topic that I'll call self-work, the work that we do on ourselves, either when we're on a spiritual path, or sometimes we do this self-work when we're just trying to improve our lives, better our lives. Maybe we've just decided we want to make some changes in our lives. Maybe we're tired of having more everything in our lives except for the good things. Some people just simply, they want to bring more joy or you could say more abundance into their life. Abundance, of course, comes in many forms. You could be speaking of bringing more abundance into your life, and you could mean bringing more joy, more times of happiness. Maybe you want to change your life in a way where you're not constantly on the rebound and reacting to things that are happening to you in your life. Maybe you just want to feel like you're more in control of your life than just trying to keep up with it. It doesn't matter what the reason is, but just like me, I'm sure everyone has met people where some of them they've known them for a while, or some they've just met. And just from spending a short amount of time with them, you can think to yourself, they could use a little work on themselves, that inner work. I meet people all the time, and now I just have this tendency to listen to the things that people say, and what's going through my mind at the time I'm listening to them is what the things that they're saying they're going through point to. It's almost like I could say with everything they said, oh, that points to an issue you have with this, or that points to an issue you have with that. Of course I don't do that, because that would just be rude and annoying. But I think sometimes, wow, this person, they could, if they got a little coaching, they could be so much happier. They could understand these things that are going on in their lives, and I'm sure that, their days would be more peaceful and more filled with joy. And that's basically what we all want. Whether we're on a spiritual path or not, no matter what our various goals in life are consciously or subconsciously, we all just want to have a good life. We want to have a good life. We want to, at the end of the day, go to sleep with a smile on our face, thinking, I had a great day, I had a lot of laughs, I got to do some wonderful things, talk to some wonderful people, and that's all what we're kind of striving for. You could say we probably all pretty much want the same things for ourselves within our lives. What's hard is that a lot of times we don't realize until we get a little bit older that we're missing the boat on anything, because we're so busy keeping up. We're so busy trying to pay the bills. We're so busy just trying to make it to work on time. Or we're just so busy trying to focus on getting that next job, trying to get a promotion, or trying to figure out how we can resolve things that have suddenly popped up into our lives unexpectedly. We're basically so busy reacting that we don't really often have time to sit and think, what is it that I want to create? What is it that I want for myself? No, a lot of people don't really feel like they have the luxury of that kind of time from day to day. And you're not alone. Most people don't have that kind of time. But even if you're working 2, 3 jobs, you have kids, you have a husband or a wife, you've got yard work to do, you're trying to maybe go to school and get a degree at the same time, you don't have to worry, because all of life is an opportunity to work on ourselves. that's if you see it that way. You actually have to get to a point. You don't just kind of jump into doing self-work. You actually have to get to a point where you realize that all of life is a chance and an opportunity to work on ourselves. I mean, think about it. What happened to you today? What thing sticks out that either happened or that you had to deal with today? Well, if you were having a conversation with a friend over the phone and telling them about this thing that happened today, you would probably replay it for them, with all the details, and tell them what happened, who said what, who did what, how you felt about it, the look on the other person's face, the look that you're sure you had on your face, and you'd recount it for them. But usually, while we're doing that, we never stop to think, this is a chance and an opportunity for me to work on myself. We just don't normally do that. But literally, if you're going to commit yourself to doing self-work, you have to start thinking that way. You literally have to start looking at the things that go on in your life as an opportunity to work on yourself. And you can do it simply by asking simple questions when things arise. Like, for example, one good question to ask is, what does this situation, what does this thing that happened, what does this teach me? Is there a lesson in this? There's usually a lesson in everything, no matter how small it is. It could be something really, simple, something that was very easy for you to overlook. But if you ask the question, what does this point to? What lesson is in this for me? You might be surprised at what you come up with just thinking about that for a couple of minutes. And then, of course, we have those days where we interact with other people in a not-so-nice way. We have those days where maybe we get into a disagreement, a dispute that we'll just say was negative, because maybe one or the other of us, maybe ourselves or the other person, seemed to go down a really negative road, or maybe they went down a negative road and we just followed. Well, we all have, days like that where someone isn't maybe happy with something we've done, and so they approach us about it. And they approach us in a antagonistic way maybe, and almost seeming ready for the fight. And what do we often do? We often play right into it. They go there, and we go there right along with them. Often we don't stop and say, hey, what does this, point at that I need to work on within myself? We don't normally do that. It's actually hard to do that. And I can tell you that from experience, because I did that. That was one of the things that I had to work on early on in doing my self-work. Because usually, when we're trying to work on improving our lives and being a better person, often we do fine until we have to leave the house and be in the company of other people and communicate with other people and interact with other people. Then that's where things start to go wrong. That's when we find, here's a person, they're not agreeing with something we are saying. They're not agreeing with something we're doing. We're in their way. We're taking, they're impatient and we're taking too much line, at the checkout counter in the grocery store. I mean, it's the minute we leave the house, we run into all these things. But it's how we react to them. Just because someone may be upset, or maybe you don't like what someone's saying to you, or maybe the way they're saying it, maybe they're telling you something that may even be true, but they're just not being so nice about it. That happens often. Often people call themselves trying to help us, but the way they're trying to help us may come out in a not-so-nice way. It may come out to us in a hurtful way, where we walk away from it not feeling helped, but instead, feeling hurt, almost like we were just, in the process of them helping us, they did that by beating us down. Well, that's not uncommon to feel that way, but it's how you're going to react to that. how you're going to handle that matters most. And that's where a lot of the self-work comes into play. When you're on a spiritual path, one of the things that you must have is control of the negative ego. Okay, so the minute you get into one of these, interactions with someone, there goes the negative ego. Often, we are not in a place and we haven't worked at controlling the negative ego so that we only respond in those situations with love and compassion and understanding. We also haven't controlled the negative ego not to talk to us in an antagonistic way, and by that what I mean is we have a little voice inside our head that is we have one that's a good voice, and we have the one that's a bad voice. It's the one that may be telling us we're too fat. It may be the one that's telling us we're not as smart as the next person. It may be the one that's telling us we should be worried about something. It's the one that's telling us, hey, they don't like you. It's the one, that little voice that's telling us, react this way. You should be offended. Go ahead. Give it back to them. That is our negative ego. And that is, if you're on a spiritual path, what you should be attempting at all costs to try to control. The negative ego actually becomes a habit, just like any other addictive habit, like smoking, drinking, doing drugs. You not only have the addiction, but then you also have the habit that you're dealing with, where you've gotten into a habit of doing something. Well, with the negative ego, what it is that we've gotten into a habit of reacting in a certain way in certain situations. We've also gotten in the habit of listening to the negative ego. We actually aren't in the habit of ignoring it. That little voice that when you stand in front of the mirror trying on, that outfit you haven't had on in a while, but you've gained a few pounds, that little voice that's like, you look, horrible, look how fat you look, oh my goodness, look at how the back of it looks. That's that little voice that is the negative ego. No good part of yourself, your higher self, does not speak this way. So I can tell you, for one, it's not your higher self talking to you. It's your negative self. The negative self has never been controlled. If it's never been controlled, it has the habit of speaking up whenever it wants to. Because that's basically the habit that's established, that it has free rein. It can say whatever it wants to us whenever it wants. And we give it our attention. We actually listen to it. And then we react based on what it tells us. It literally is controlling us. But if you're on a spiritual path, you better believe you have to eventually control the negative ego. Now, I remember when I first started out, there was always conversations about the ego. And it was always this conversation about, well, not only what is, the ego and the negative ego, but also what is supposed to be the goal. Are you supposed to get rid of it? Is this something bad? You're supposed to totally try to get rid of it, or is this something you're just trying to, supposed to try to control, or is this something that's important to worry about at all? Well, the answer to that question is no, you cannot get rid of the negative ego. It is literally a part of us that we are born with, so you can't actually get rid of it. But what you're supposed to be able to do is you are supposed to be able to be in control of it. For example, Jesus, he was in control of every part of himself in every way. He was in control of the lesser self. The negative ego is a part of the lesser self. So to say you're going to try to control the negative ego is almost also like you're saying you're going to control the lesser self and not let it control you. Because of course your goal is that you want to eventually one day completely merge with your higher self and have your higher self be what's coming forward 100%, not the lesser self. Or some people call the lesser self something different. Some people refer to it as the lesser self as just the human self, and then there's the higher self. That is the divine self, the self that has none of these issues, the self that knows all, understands all. We are trying to become more of that and less of the human self that suffers everything. and that has no control over anything. So that is basically what our goal is if you're on a spiritual path. But even if you're not on a spiritual path, this is a good goal to have. Whether you're just trying to improve your life, improve the relationships you have in your life, or even improve business. What a lot of people don't understand is that when they work on the self, and maybe when they're on a spiritual path, they'll notice that as certain things change in their life and improvements are made in their life, and they're more peaceful and they're loving life more, they will tend to notice that also it has an effect when it comes to their business, whether it's their job or whether they're running a business. This doesn't just affect your personal life. When you make changes to any part of the self, it affects everything across the board. So even the way you do business, you'll notice that you start to do business better. You start to become more organized. You start to make better decisions. You start to actually, through having explored your own self, learn from your own self, and then made changes to your own self, you'll actually find that you get to this point where you actually understand the actions of others better than ever before. Now, if you're a person who often is like, so-and-so did this, I don't understand it, that crossed the line, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it happens to all of us. But if you find yourself doing that a lot, well, you're just not understanding the other person and where they're coming from. You're not seeing what's going on the other side of things for what it is. You're seeing the illusion, and the illusion says, this happened, and that person said this and that, and they did this and that. That's the illusion. But underneath there's a reality. And maybe the reality is that person is going through something of their own. That person has issues just like you do that they need to work on and change. Now, you do, and I have compassion for you for it. So if you understand and have compassion for yourself for the things you need to work on and the changes you need to make, then you should be able to also have compassion for that other person who also has their own things that they need to work on with their own self. Now, maybe they're not consciously trying to do that, and maybe you are, but regardless, you should be able to have compassion for them because, why? You understand it. Why do you understand it? You understand it because you understand it from a self perspective, because you understand it from not only going through it yourself, but as you start to do the work on yourself, you start to understand and feel more compassion for others who are, doing things and getting, into conflicts with people. You start to understand them better just from the self-work that you have done. And that can have an amazing impact on business. Because why? Now you can have better communication with business partners, clients, basically anyone across the board, employees. You can deal with everyone on a better level, to the point where they will see and feel the compassion you have, that you react with more than reacting with the negative ego, and they will respond to that. Now, that nicely leads me up to saying this. The only way to change any person or any situation that you're dealing with is to change yourself. That, of course, is the only person you have control over, is your own self. The way to bring about change in your life, even if you see that the change that you need has to do with what's going on with another person, you obviously cannot change that other person. However, you can change yourself. Through changing yourself, you will, in the end, change that other person. Now, of course, yes, some people do say, oh, well, and I had it happen to myself as well, where I did all this changing, and then certain people in my life didn't change. And I was like, at first I was baffled by it. And kind of disappointed, because I'd done all this work. I tried so hard. And then, in the end, they didn't change. But then, at first, my reaction was, you kind of feel like you got sort of shortchanged because you did all that work, and then the other person didn't change, and then you were kind of feeling like, okay, well, nothing has changed. But then when you think about it, you think, well, wait a minute, something did change. What changed is me. What changed is the fact that the things that they do and the things that they say, they no longer bother me. They no longer make me react emotionally in a negative way, which messes up the kind of energy I'm putting out. They're no longer completely like messing up my life because of how they get me into a reactory mode. And then you realize that the most important change, to begin with, that you didn't see at the time, was that you change yourself anyway. Then you realize that it really wasn't important for them to change. What was most important was that you change, because that's where the key to your own happiness is. It's not with whether another person changes, because some people do and some people don't. But actually the key lies in your own change and whether you can be happy regardless of what's going on around you. I mean, can there be, just all kinds of chaos going on around you? Because, that is the reality of the world. At any given time, there is much chaos going on. Any moment, just look at your watch. There's chaos going on somewhere at that moment, maybe even around you. But in the midst of that chaos, can you stay true to yourself? Meaning, can you stay true in that moment, not let your negative ego go into I'm in charge mode, and just stay true to yourself and make the decision of what your reality is. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. What's your reality? I know in my reality, everything is exactly as it should be. At this very moment, everything is perfect. Now, of course, that's my perspective. That's my reality. You may look and you may say, well, how can you say everything is perfect? You got a car without air conditioning. You got a 7-year-old that 1 second he's happy and the next second he's screaming. How can you say everything's perfect? Well, in my reality, everything is perfect. But I have done self-work in a way where I see things as they happen for what they really are and what's going on. I see the lessons that are being set my way. Bad things happen. Hey, I break down in the middle of an intersection on a really busy road. I can thank God for that. Can you? That's the question. Can you? Can you see some of the things that happen in your life for what they truly are? A chance to learn, a chance to be given, that we're given over and over and over again, to try to control not only our negative ego, but, control every part of ourselves, how we react, how we handle situations. For a time there, I was constantly, I had this habit. I would constantly, throughout the day, as things would come up, no matter what they were, I would say, with dignity and grace. And what I meant by that is, it was remember, Sherry, just whatever you do it with dignity and grace. And the minute I thought that or I said it, it would kind of stop me. And it would make me kind of look at, okay, how were you getting ready to react to that? What were you getting ready to do? And was it reacting or behaving with dignity and grace? Often, in the beginning when you first start working, you realize that much of what you catch yourself getting ready to do or doing is not with dignity and grace, but that's your chance to learn. The great thing is that every day you have this great thing, you get a clean slate. It's wonderful, right? You wake up in the morning, you get to start with a clean slate. But that's only if you allow yourself to. That's what you're given. But that's what you're given, and that's what you have. That's if you decide to take it. But there are many people that don't take it. There are many people that don't start every morning off with a clean slate. Why? Because they held guilt for what happened the day before. They went to sleep still not satisfied with what took place that day, and they didn't let go of it. They couldn't let go of it. So they don't start really with that clean slate. Oh, yeah, it's given to them. They just don't take it. but it's yours to take if you want it. You don't have to feel guilty about anything that happened, no matter how bad it was. Even if you were the one doing something bad or saying something bad, you don't have to hold on to that. You know, the truth of the matter is, God doesn't treat you as your sins deserve. You know, what that means is, He always treats you as if you've never done anything wrong. And I mean, that's the whole reason why people pray. It's because they know there's one person that won't hold anything against them. That's God. And so they pray, no matter what they did that day. I mean, really, think about it. You probably know some people that go to church every Sunday. Maybe they pray every day. And think about some of the things that you've seen them do. Well, it's not stopping them from praying. They're not feeling too guilty to pray, right? But that's because they know that they get to do that. They know that they get to ask for help without having to worry about what they did yesterday or what they did the day before. God isn't holding you, guilty for it. Then why hold yourself? And this is a part of the self-work, a part of seeing the truth, a part of seeing that you don't have anything to feel guilty for. As you work from day to day, you're going to fail more than you succeed. And actually, failure isn't bad. We're raised by our parents and taught that, yeah, it's bad to fail, it's bad to cry, it's bad to this, and it's bad to that. Well, it's not bad to cry and it's not bad to fail, no matter who you are. Excuse me. So, the great thing is that you will fail more than you succeed. But actually, you're not really failing because you're succeeding as long as you're trying. Every one of those failures really aren't a failure. That's you trying. It just depends on how you look at it. You can look at it as a failure, and then if you do, you're probably going to give yourself a complex sooner or later. But if you realize that every time you failed, that wasn't you failing, that was you trying, and the truth is, you're never going to fail as long as you keep trying. It's the moment you stop trying that you fail. And so that's all you have to do. It's literally that simple. Don't stop trying. And that's something that I first learned, a few years ago. And I actually learned that from Saint Germain. The first place that I read it, I've read it many places since then from Ascended Master Channelings, but the first place I read it was in the book Alchemy for Self-Transformation. That is one of the things that's said within, the first couple of chapters, is you were given the keyword try. Try actually stands for something, but I won't get into that today. But it actually has a meaning and stands for something. But the other meaning that it's given to mean is that you have to keep trying. Working on the self isn't something that you designate. You don't say, okay, I have some free time later, I'm going to work on the self. I hear a lot of people always saying, I have some free time later, I'm going to work on it. No, your whole life is working on it. And you have to incorporate your spiritual work, your work on the self. You have to manage to incorporate it into your whole life, into every moment of it. If you're driving your car to work and somebody cuts you off, that's you working on yourself. Because why? How you react or how you're able to control yourself in that situation, whether or not you're able to just send out thoughts of compassion and love versus giving the person the finger. That's you working on yourself. So every part of your life, you get a chance to work on yourself. The question is whether you're going to take it or not. There are many, many people that take that chance, take that opportunity that they're given every day. And then there are many people I see that never pick up that chance, that same thing that they're given that I'm given. They never pick it up. But they are also the same people that I hear every day tell me what they want. They know what they want. They know that they want it. But I never see them stoop down to pick it up because that takes effort. It's not just what we're talking about isn't something that takes no action. It isn't something that just requires you to meditate and sit peaceful like. No, it's actually really hard work. Self-work is, even if you're not on a spiritual path and you're going to do some self-work is really, really hard. It's really tough. There are many days when you really feel like you want to feel defeated. But then, because of the self-work, you can't feel that way. Because you have to let it go. That you can't feel guilty for whatever you managed to do or didn't manage to do. You can't feel guilty if you let your negative ego get the best of you and cause yourself to curse somebody out. You can't feel guilt for that. You actually have to let it go. And that's what forgiveness is all about. When it comes to self-work, one of the important things that you really have to do is learn the importance of forgiveness. And a lot of times when people hear forgiveness, they think of forgiveness of other people. Yeah, that's important, of course. If somebody did something to you like 20 years ago and you still haven't forgiven them, well, you might want to look at that. But what's even as important is forgiveness of your own self. If you're not forgiving your own self, then that means you're holding on to the past in a way where, like, you're still beating yourself up for it. If you're not, forgiving yourself. And the funny thing is, a lot of the times, other people will forgive us. They'll totally forgive us. They'll let a situation go, put it out of their minds. But it is guilt sometimes that keeps us, feeling guilty about it and not forgiving ourselves. And it's funny because maybe the person that really, that maybe you did or said something to, if anyone should be upset, maybe it should be them. But no, instead, you're the one that's, holding the guilt. You're the one that's not forgiving yourself. You're beating up your own self because, they're not, but you are. Well, let me give you an example of the power of forgiving your own self. Many times when Jesus would heal someone, there were things he would say, and many of them you've probably read in the Bible. They're called, this is a part of alchemy. In alchemy, you learn the sacred words. These are words that if you have God's energy running through you, energy from your I am presence running through your higher self and into you, and you've done the work on your self, so that when the energy runs through you, it's not filtered and it stays pure, and your vibrations are high because of the spiritual work that you've done, then the sacred words will work for you. So a lot of people ask me, like, what's the secret? What's the key? They want to know, like, how did Jesus do all those things? So what's the key? What's the secret? Well, that is the secret, basically. Do the work. You know what I mean? Do the spiritual work. Raise your vibrations. It's hard, but it can be done. So many others have done it. But there are many things he said. And he said them out loud and in a almost commanding voice. Now, if you know anything about decrees or you want to, go to summitlighthouse.org and read a little bit about decrees and how they work and how decrees are supposed to be said, you will notice something. It explains this, and it explains that there is a reason why decrees and prayers need to be said out loud, because words have power. Words carry vibration, and it is the spoken word that has power and has vibrations. So anyway, this thing that he sometimes said when he was healing someone and healed them spontaneously, he would say, "Thou sins are forgiven thee." And they would have a spontaneous healing. Well, what would happen is that the very thing that was causing their illness was something they were holding on to that they weren't forgiving themselves for. So all he really did was he did what they wouldn't do for their own selves. So he did the act of forgiving them when they couldn't. Now, don't get the impression that what I'm saying is if you can't forgive yourself, then run to your nearest priest and say, Sherry says for me to be healed, I need you to tell me you forgive me for this thing I did. No, that is not what I'm getting at. It is very difficult, but you have to actually take the time. This is a part of the self-work I'm talking about. When there are things from your past that you find you're still hanging on to, you find you're still guilty for, you actually have to take the time to, look at them, look at it, the situation from all sides, try to see it, for what was really going on, the reality of it, not the illusion. I mean, you might cry a lot, because that's often what happens. I mean, doing self-work, I probably spent more time crying than I ever have in my whole life, because you always realize something. There's always something that comes to the surface that maybe for the last 20 years you did not see, and you suddenly realize it. And it's like a light bulb goes on. And then there's the waterworks, and there's lots of crying. So, and when you do the self-work, expect to spend a lot of time crying sometimes, because you're replaying things that happened so that you can look at them from different angles. But sometimes, you also will cry for joy because you realize something that maybe for the last 20 or 30 years that you hadn't realized about something, that then that finally, that light bulb going off and realizing some things and realizing the truth, finally you were able to release maybe guilt that you'd been feeling, and you finally got to that point where you could finally forgive yourself because you realized the truth. And that is very powerful. So, I mean, you can imagine, why wouldn't you cry? I mean, this could be something you could have been carrying with you for 20 or 30 years. But, like I said, often, Jesus would heal people that he could, because of his abilities, he could see what the problem was, what was really creating the illness. And for some it was that they weren't forgiving themselves. For some it was completely different things. It was something that didn't even have anything to do with that lifetime, but maybe something they carried forward from a previous lifetime. And also often he did heal people in privacy, and not out in the open, and he often requested that the people not tell anyone, what was done at the time or what was said. And there was a reason for it, because these are considered, let me think how I would call it. These are considered, if you were studying, if you were a student, you would consider this an advanced study. You wouldn't consider this information for a beginner or an intermediate level. These things hold power, and back during that time they took very seriously who knew what, who had the power of knowing what the spoken sacred words were. During this day and age, of course, you can find anything on the internet, but also it doesn't really matter. The words don't work just by themselves. It requires them to be said by a person who has certain things going on, who have mastered certain things, and certain chakras for that matter. And by mastering certain chakras, I don't mean just having opened and cleared them. There is a whole other level to that, which I'm not going to get into now because I'm just wanting to discuss self-work. But so you see, forgiveness is very, very important when you're doing self-work. Also, understanding some universal laws is also helpful. I mean, not necessary, but sometimes it helps if you know the truth, because while you're working on the self, you often end up in situations that are hard that you just don't understand. And so it helps knowing the truth in situations, because you're trying to do this your self-work. You're really trying to react in a way where you have compassion and understanding. But sometimes you have a hard time seeing why certain things happen the way they do. And it can be discouraging sometimes. But that's why I always recommend to people, if you're really trying to do self-work, if you're really on a spiritual path, you really have to spend some time gaining knowledge. Spiritual advancement doesn't happen by itself. Just like self-work doesn't happen by itself. You don't get up in the morning and decide you're going to work on the self and take no action. You don't get anything from doing self-work unless there's really some action you're taking. You're taking control, and you're doing something, and you're making an effort, and you're trying. Well, self-work, spiritual work, it's not I know I heard it put this way one time by an ascended master. It's not something that requires passivity. If you say that you're working on your spirituality, but you're all about passivity, you're not working on your spirituality then. So if all you're doing is just meditating and just praying a little bit, half an hour a day, that's passivity. You're not really working on your spirituality like you think you are. So if you're asking the question of someone like, I've been working on this so long, why aren't I getting anywhere, or why haven't I gotten too far? Well, that's your answer right there. It literally takes action. It takes hard work. And you do not get there by being passive. Yes, you will spend some time meditating and praying, but there's a lot of work that's involved in addition to that. You meditate and you pray to raise your vibrations, to come closer to your higher self so that you can eventually merge with your higher self. That is your reason to meditate and pray. It does not, meditation and prayer is not the beginning and the end to the answer of how to work on your spiritual path. That is not the 100% total complete answer. It is just a piece. Think of it as a piece of the puzzle. Think of it as, to really work on your spirituality, you have a puzzle, and you have to get all the pieces and put them in place. You can't just get two pieces and put those two together, and call that good enough. You need all the pieces, and you need them all working together. You need them all interlocking, and you need them interlocking the way that they're supposed to be, so that you're, as a whole, with everything you're doing and everything you're working on, you'll find that it all comes together for you. You'll find that then you will start to make some spiritual advancement. Often the only reason why some people aren't really feeling like they're moving ahead is because they're really not doing a lot of self-work. They're not really attempting to consciously make a lot of change. They're just taking what comes. If that's all you're going to do in life, just take what comes. I'll take it when it comes, or, if God wants me to have this, then He'll give it to me. If that's how you're going to go about doing it, then you're not doing it. Hate to be the one to tell you that, but you're not doing it. You're not on a spiritual path like you think you are. Now, if you want to get serious, you want to do it, well, it takes a lot of hard work. It's sometimes unbelievable how hard and how difficult it can be. But as many of the ascended masters have said, and will remind you, it is well worth the benefit. And no, the benefit isn't, many people think the benefit of, the ultimate benefit of spiritual work is a little phrase that is in the Bible that confuses many, that says, take dominion. That's been brought up to me several times. Oh, well, God says that, we should take dominion, over everything. But they misunderstand what take dominion means. Did you know that take dominion actually means take dominion over the self, take control of the self? Do you really think that he means for people who have no control of their self, who are reactory, fly off the handle, sending negative energy out every time they turn around because they have no control of themselves? Do you really think that he meant for a person in that state to take control of the world? Obviously not. Take dominion actually means take control of your world, yourself. So if you didn't know that before, okay, well then, this hour wasn't wasted and I taught you something. Well, I'm going to cut it early because I think I've talked enough and I think I've given you enough to think about. I really hope that if you are currently doing work on the self or you're doing spiritual work and you've listened to this, that as you maybe go along and you're working more and more on the self, that you'll take the time to come back and maybe, listen to it again down the road. Maybe a few months from now, listen to it again. Maybe there is something that you will hear that you'll notice that you didn't notice this time, that you're actually ready for at that time because, and that's the last thing I want to talk about. Often when we are reading things and we're trying to gain knowledge, we're only going to be able to take in and have an understanding of that which we are ready for at the time. So often, you can read a whole book. So let's say if you decide to get the book on alchemy for self-transformation, which I would definitely recommend you do that, you read it the first time. This is not a one-time reading book. This is not a book that you read one time and you put it on a bookshelf and you're done. You will never be done. Because as you do your spiritual work and as you raise your vibrations, you will periodically go back to this book maybe every 2-3 months and you'll reread it again. And every time you will be at a level where you will have the ability to understand something that you did not previously. So what I'm saying is you can only understand those things which you are at a level to understand. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If you read a book or a channeling and you're like, oh, I only understood like 25% of that. That's not wrong. That's actually right. That was the way it was supposed to happen. You're only supposed to understand at that time what you are at a level to understand. Then, as you increase your knowledge, you continue doing your spiritual work, you continue doing your work on self, and all those things help you raise your vibrations. As you raise your vibrations, you will be at a level where you can understand more. You can understand more complex spiritual concepts. And so you go back and you pick up the book again and you read it again, and you will be amazed that the second and the third and the fourth time you read it, that there will be things that you will actually question. You'll be like, I don't even remember reading this the first, second, or third time, but now I'm noticing and I get it. Well, that is how it works. You have to understand how change comes about. Sometimes we want change, and so we think that it's simple. Oh, if I want to, change by learning something, maybe, or improving myself. So we think, okay, well, I need that knowledge, and so we start reading, and we expect that it's going to be just that simple. Okay, well, I read it, but I still don't feel like I get it. No, you may not get it, but it may be that you're not ready for it yet. Believe me, when you're at a level where you're ready for the information, it will make sense to you. So as I say this, what I mean exactly is if you only understood half of what I said just now, that's not wrong. That's actually right, because you should have only been able to understand the things I'm saying that you're at a level to understand. So, like I say, you go, you do your self-work, you do your spiritual work, and then you come back again, and you listen again. And there will be things that I will say that you will swear I didn't say the first time you listened to it. It's just how it works, So remember that, and don't be hard on yourself when you were trying to do the reading and you're trying to increase your knowledge. Because often we're hard on ourselves, and it will cause us to stop working at it because we get a little frustrated because it's not that easy. But nobody ever told you it was going to be easy. Nobody ever said that. Nobody ever said, do work on yourself. It's easy. Nobody ever said that. It's not easy. I'm telling you right now. It's not easy. You're going to cry a lot. So is it worth it? Are the benefits worth it to you? Of course. Are you still going to do it? Well, I hope so. But if you do, cut yourself some slack, because we don't do that enough. And so we fail sometimes even before we've started good, because the minute we throw in the towel and decide something is too difficult, or for some reason we're just not getting it and we throw in the towel, oh, well, guess what just happened? Didn't we just stop trying? And isn't that what I said, that you must keep doing? All else fails, that as long as you try, you don't fail. So, if at one time you were working on yourself, or you were consciously working on your spirituality and you stopped, well, maybe you should think about that. Why did you stop? Did it get, was it difficult? Was it stressful at times because you were trying to do it while everyone else around you, wanted to do something else? Really look at it. Why did you stop trying? Because you didn't have to. Even the little bit that you can do and that you can give of yourself to yourself in a day, it matters. That even that little bit of time that you have, it all matters. It all counts. And you can't stop trying, because then you will fail. So if you need a boost, what you do is you read something that inspires you. Like, for example, Alchemy for Self-Transformation. That's inspiring. You know what else is inspiring? There's this book called The Law of Spirit, written by Dan Millman. Now, Dan Millman is the same guy that wrote Way of the Peaceful Warrior and Way of the Sacred Warrior. 2 awesome books. Read something that's inspiring. Read something where it's going to tell you the right thing. There are plenty of people around us, and then including our own lesser self, our own negative ego, that isn't telling us good things throughout the day, isn't telling us things that are motivating and inspiring. So, don't rely on the people around you. Find ways to inspire your own self to stay on the path. Don't expect that it's going to be a path that's easy to stay on. It's not. We may want it really bad, but literally it's not an easy path to stay on. And, to not feel like, every day doesn't get any easier. No, it won't. But that's okay, because the benefits way outweigh, anything that you have to go through. The sweat and tears, the benefits outweigh all that. Yeah, there's sweat and tears in spirituality and self-work. But anyway, I thank you very, very, very much for listening. And I appreciate your time. And I look forward very much to you coming back again on Thursday to listen. And yes, I know I've been recording the sessions. That's only because with the summer session and my son is out of school, until we kind of get more into a routine, which he's not in yet, I'd rather not take the chance that at 9 o'clock I go on the air and I've still got my son running around chasing the dog, screaming in the background. So forgive me for recording it for right now, but once we get more on a routine, and then I'll be back with you live. Until then, I miss you, and I look forward to speaking with you again on Thursday. Bye.